Now living on the North Coast, the former Night Star returned to Newcastle to face court this morning. After being excused on previous occasions, today Danny Wicks had to make an appearance and was accompanied by his solicitor Mark Hanlon. The court heard negotiations between the defence and the prosecution have stalled as the DPP has reallocated the matter to a new solicitor. While leaving court, Wicks left the talking to Mr Hanlon.
Will you be entering a plea next time you're back in court, Danny?
No comments. No thanks.
And within seconds, he was whisked away by a waiting car. Wicks is charged with 8 counts of supplying and possessing amphetamine and ecstasy, including allegedly supplying on the 13th and 14th of September, the day before and the day of the night's season-ending Mad Monday. His co-accused, Stephen Stefanowski, who's charged with drug supply, also faced court today, while his former teammate and flatmate Chris Houston was excused. Wicks's case has been adjourned to September 1. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This fire travelled up into an electrical fuse box at the back of the building, which then went up through the wall and roof cavity and set the 2-storey building alight.
It's a fishy issue that's on the nose for recreational and commercial anglers. The creation of marine parks, they say, has little environmental benefit for species, but does impact on some fishermen's ability to make a livelihood, particularly in Port Stephens.
People are now scared to fish here. There's a lot of people being fined who didn't even know they were in the wrong area.
Paterson MP Bob Baldwin says if elected, a coalition government would change the way the protection areas are created.
The coalition will freeze the federal marine parks legislation. We will go back to the drawing board. We will consult heavily and come to a solution that benefits not only the recreational commercial fishermen but also the environmental benefits as well.
The announcement could help reel in the fishing vote in the hunters' most marginal seat.
I'm pretty happy about the situation that they're actually wanting to readdress marine parks, but they actually need to do things that matter and not pretend to make nice maps that really don't address any of the real threats.
While recreational fishermen have welcomed the news, commercial ones remain sceptical. Today, Newcastle's Brett Bollinger said, "The trouble is I can't see how they're going to do it because the process is already in place." Madeline Bond, NBN News.
They just don't make them like this anymore. A drive through Catherine Hill Bay is like taking a step back in time.
Well, it's the only example of a coal mining company town on the coast in New South Wales, and it has remained intact.
And it looks set to stay that way. The plan is to heritage list the entire village, all 100 homes. The only exception is the jetty.
That jetty has been virtually demolished by neglect, and it's going to take quite a bit of money to bring it up.
There's only one other town in New South Wales listed on the Heritage Register, and if Catherine Hill Bay makes it, developers will have to steer clear. But the residents can't live the quiet life just yet. The government has invited Coal and Allied and Rose Group to resubmit applications for 2 controversial housing developments nearby. The companies own these 2 parcels of land and want to build a total of 820 homes. The last time the proposals were submitted, they were thrown out because a land swap agreement was ruled illegal. Residents believe they may be able to win their battle a second time.
we now think because there isn't a prior agreement, we might have a better chance of bringing the number of houses down to be a much more acceptable level.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
It was a frank admission by the Port Stephens Mayor.
And perhaps we've jumped in a bit early and putting the restrictions on, so I want to probably wipe the slate clean, tell the people that we're on their side and start again.
Last night, Bruce Mackenzie submitted a mayoral minute to council proposing a public meeting with residents to discuss those building regulations. One states that certain vacant blocks in residential areas can no longer be built on, while another will force some new homeowners to pay tens of thousands of dollars to noise-proof properties.
To me, that's absolute rubbish, so I'm not going to support that. So these are the sorts of things we've got to look at.
What's more, the Mayor plans to call on the Defence Department to investigate whether extending the RAF base's runway would reduce the noise impact for residents, and he wants the new jet noise footprint, which takes the arrival of the Joint Strike Fighter into account, to be scrapped.
Because it's been changed enough, I think they should change it again. After all, they're talking about the aircraft coming in 2018 or 2020. That's if it comes at all, so I think that that's a long, long lead time to have people worried sick.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
She has the model looks and moves. But Maxine Stokes is keen to show she's more than a beauty queen. Over recent months, the 21-year-old has spent time fundraising and volunteering for Ronald McDonald House, building a rapport with the families which visit. So far, she's raised $5,000 for her chosen charities for the Miss World Australia contest.
The charity aspect really just drew me to this competition, and the fact that I could raise money for the Ronald McDonald House and be a volunteer and also get the community involvement, that was a very exciting aspect of the competition for me.
The competition's motto is beauty with a purpose, much more than a model quest.
We have fitness, so you have to have a healthy body image. You also have to have poise and elegance. We have a talent section, and we also have a lot of community and charity work involved.
Of course, there is also a glamorous side. Local designer Sheena Murray is creating Maxine's evening gown for the competition finals to be judged in Newcastle over Sunday and Monday.
Surely you must have some kind of home ground advantage. They're all coming here to your place?
I hope so.
The winner will be crowned in Sydney on Tuesday. Miss World Australia title or not, Maxine says the competition has been a great experience.
Actually, being involved in this competition has really showed me what I want to do, and I really want to be an ambassador for charities and organisations that do make a difference.
Now, the Newcastle community you mentioned has been really great.
The Knights won't go down without a fight. But they'll need to punch above their weight from here on in. 6 weeks out, Rick Stone is watching the NRL finals slip away.
We need to win probably nearly most of our games, I'd suggest.
Needless to say, that won't be easy, especially with so many players feeling off colour. Those in the green are ready to go. The yellow jerseys are on the go slow.
We've probably got our biggest contingent of yellow, which is not full contact sort of players, probably as far as I can remember anyway.
Some were asked to sit out. Junior Sauer, one of 4 who'll have a fitness test on Saturday. Injury force changes will see Shannon McDonnell start at fullback, while Captain Kurt moves to the halves.
It's about battling through the tough times, and whatever players come in, they're asked to do the job on the weekend.
That job to stop the Sea Eagles swooping like they did in round 3.
Certainly their forwards are big and physical, and we certainly need to match them defensively there.
Nat Wallace, NBN News. A mother of 3, Anne Mort, already carries a lot of weight on her shoulders.
Sometimes it's difficult, but we get there.
She's well and truly Ashton Field's golden girl. Last weekend, the 52-year-old stepped out for the Powerlifting Championships, and her grip on the 75-kilo crown never wavered. Australian title number 15 appeared just as easy as the others.
It feels amazing. It's been on a long run to the top, I suppose.
This time around, there was also a 112-kilogram bench press, a Commonwealth record, a feat that proved too great a weight for her once powerlifting husband, John.
You've done better than him, haven't you?
I'd have to say yes.
Yes. How does that make him feel?
He's pretty proud. He's my coach.
I take it you've never had to help Anne with the shopping?
No, never. No. And not pushing the trolleys either, mate. No. That's always a question we get asked, and no, we don't throw fridges at each other when we have an argument either.
But things could be tense soon. Anne wants to take it easy, while John has his sights set on Title 16.
You retire at the top, but not while you're progressing.
Well, my intention was to make this my last nationals, but because I lifted so well, everybody's turned my arm, and it looks like I've got to continue.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
For 4 hours last night, 2 men, 2 women and a 5-month-old baby endured a terrifying ordeal inside this Morna Point Road home.
It would have been a very traumatic experience for all of them.
It began at 9:30 when a man posing as a police officer knocked on the door, flashing a badge.
So the resident has let this fella in, but as he's come into the house, he was followed in by 3 more males as well.
The man then threatened the occupants with a gun and demanded cash. The women and baby were locked in a room while the men were tied up and assaulted. The offenders then spent 4 hours ransacking the property before escaping with jewellery and electronic items. It's a crime that stunned the normally quiet neighbourhood.
It's a shock to the community because we don't have anything like that normally happen around this town.
It definitely sent goosebumps up my arm, yeah.
NBN News understands that the attack may not have been random. Neighbours say just weeks ago an unknown man threatened the family and demanded money and said he'd be back if he didn't get it. Today, forensic police scoured the property for clues. So far, the offenders have only been described as being of Pacific Islander appearance, and police are appealing for witnesses. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Bob Baldwin today offered his constituents a bold election promise, how the coalition will deal with future noise levels created by the RAF's Joint Strike Fighters being based at Williamtown.
We will reduce the noise footprint, the noise pressure over Raymond Terrace, Riverview Ridge, Brandy Hill and other areas.
And he revealed a 4-point plan which he says will do just that.
We will introduce an instrument landing system that will allow landings to come from the sea, not necessarily over Brandy Hill, Raymond Terrace or Riverview Ridge. Secondly, we commit to extending the runway to the maximum length possible to move the noise footprint.
The Patterson incumbent says the cost of extending the runway would be included in the Joint Strike Fighters set-up costs. Mr Baldwin also promised to establish an independent committee which would examine all noise mitigating strategies. Labor candidate Jim Arneman was less forthcoming about what his party will do for now.
The extension of the runway is certainly something I've been canvassing very strongly with Defence, and I am very confident that we're going to have some sort of an announcement on that in the course of the campaign. But there's a range of other options that can be put forward here.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
With Tilligra Dam expected to be a key state election issue in the Hunter, candidates were in campaign mode early.
You're talking about roughly 80% of people aren't interested in it, they don't want to pay for it, and they're certainly indicating they don't want to vote for it either.
Greens representative John Kay told the Forum the dam is complete lunacy. Liberal candidate for Maitland Robin Parker called for an independent inquiry, while would-be Newcastle MP John Tate said he's not opposed to the concept but wants more information before making a decision. There was no sign of member for Newcastle Jodie McKay, who cited prior ministerial commitments. No excuse according to organisers.
Unfortunately, Jodie McKay declined her invitation on 2 occasions and has also disappointingly failed to provide a New South Wales government representative.
A number of community organisations also spoke against the $477 million dam, including the Pensioners Association, which says the project will hit the elderly in the hip pocket.
For a pensioner, for example, that looks like a $300+ increase on their bill, and a very minimal increase in their rebates.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
It's not hard to see why this daredevil sport would be popular. Apparently so popular, it's spiralling out of control. Now, in an effort to add more organisation and structure to the series, officials have made the curious decision to cancel it for next year. It's a blow for Aussie pilot Matt Hall, who hit the gym this morning to prepare for a race in Germany next weekend, which will now be his last for some time.
This is my career, and to not be racing does have an effect on my own, not just my business development, but also my my family and money in the bank.
Hall has already had a rough year, out for 2 races after this nail-biting near miss, but he says there is a silver lining. Organisers will use the layoff to make the sport better by creating a proper set of rules and attracting more host cities. It'll also allow pilots to strengthen their teams and fine-tune their craft.
It's really just restructuring so that when I get to a race, the plane is set up perfectly. I know the plane inside out. And we know that if something does go wrong, we've got the correct facilities around me, the pilot, to make sure that I have the best chance of survival.
But of course, the success of the decision all hinges on whether the fans and sponsors stick around.
I do think that everything will work out. I'm a positive sort of guy, and one way or the other, it will turn out for the best.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News. The Knights are a side under pressure. They have to win most, if not all, of their remaining 5 matches to have any chance of making the finals.
We understand the position we're in, and we've got ourselves into that position for sure. But our preparation to the game and how we approach each game won't be any different. What we need to do is concentrate on each week as it comes.
A mounting casualty list doesn't help, but at least one of those on it, forward Dan Toller, should be right to line up on Monday night after missing a week due to a corked thigh. Cooper Vuna's also back in the run-on side and has a point to prove before his defection to rugby union.
I think, next year will come next year, but for now I just got to, focus on, making it big for Newcastle and for the club and, giving back what they've given to me, so.
The club hopes the traditional Newcastle-Manly rivalry will ensure a healthy home crowd.
If you don't support Manly, they're probably your most hated footy side generally in rugby league supporters, and I think Manly enjoy that sort of tag, and I'm sure the Newcastle people enjoy that sort of rivalry as well.
Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
Newcastle is a very good chance in this. It's one of 4 sites the New South Wales government is putting forward. That is why we are investing that more than $60 million into the Western Grandstand.
Incumbent Paterson MP Bob Baldwin holds a very slim 0.6% margin, but both he and challenger Jim Arneman maintain it doesn't matter where their names appear on the ballot paper. Nonetheless, they didn't miss today's draw.
I think years ago donkey votes were an item. I think people that do that these days are more inclined to put an informal vote in. I think people consider where they place their vote.
Look, I don't think the position on the ballot paper really has a lot of bearing. At the end of the day, people are informed on what the big issues are.
And that's just as well because neither hopeful drew top spot, which can prove beneficial in a marginal seat. That candidate was One Nation's Kevin Lear, with Bob Baldwin drawing 5th and Jim Arneman 6th. The major parties will also be midway down the ballot paper across the Hunter's other 4 electorates, with the exception of Charlton, incumbent Greg Combay drawing top spot and Liberal John McDonald 3rd. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Layman Street is closed and clearly there's no entry to traffic. Newcastle City Council says the street will remain like this indefinitely and at least until an arborist can once again examine the trees. Novocastrians are having mixed emotions about that.
I think if they're causing a problem like this, if people aren't coming to the library more, if people aren't going to the regional gallery more, then I do think it needs to be resolved and maybe pulled out.
It's a terrible thing really, because the trees are really beautiful here. I've never seen your branches down.
No one from Newcastle City Council was available to comment on camera today, but Council did issue a statement saying the reason the road's closed is because a Hunter water worker cut through a 1.5 metre long section of route from this tree, and they're worried that the tree is now unstable. The saga surrounding the figs first began 18 months ago when they showed signs of ageing, and Council is no closer to deciding their fate.
I think they probably should have handled it better.
It's not the first time Council has faced such a dilemma. Back in 2002, a 20-tonne boulder fell onto Shortland Esplanade from a nearby cliff. It took the Council 2.5 years to decide to remove it. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Meet Fatso and Chops, the newest additions to the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children. So far, they've been a big hit with kindergarten students. The Hunters Centre has incorporated the animals into its curriculum and uses them to enhance the children's language skills.
The children definitely become more confident around animals. Animals have a big impact on them. And the other thing that happens is that you see children who, they learn how to be gentle, they learn how to wait and be patient because they have to do that or the sheep won't come near them.
The ewes have only just arrived along with a newly built pen after the school's last enclosure was damaged by dogs.
Do you like them?
A little bit.
Why only a little bit?
Because they're for my feet.
As well as learning tools, the animals have become playmates, whether they like it or not.
What's your favourite games to play with the sheep?
To chase them.
You like to chase them?
Yes. And I'm tired.
You're tired?
Yeah.
Is that from chasing the sheep?
Yeah.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
If we didn't have any plants or trees, we wouldn't be able to survive because they produce air for us.
It makes it pretty and they give us air to breathe.
Lunch with a Miss Universe.
is only a casual affair if you're not Miss Universe. On an all too brief trip home, it was a family affair, Jen's mum Gail and sister Christy only having to share her with a room full of admirers.
It must be nice to get back. Like I said, even if it is just for a couple of days, particularly with the fam.
It's the best. I love coming back to Newcastle. I'm always raving about it, like in my travels. The beaches, just around Derby Street, the new boutiques and the new cafes and also honeysuckle. So I think Newcastle's it's really modern and it's transformed and it's the place to be and I just love it.
Well, it's already been a hectic year for you. You've just been to Europe. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I've just come back from Europe and Italy. The first week was holidaying with my boyfriend Jake, and then the second week I was shooting for Marie Claire Ready to Wear, so that was in Paris.
Some fantastic things happening.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for the position I'm in. Seriously, like it's a dream come true. Cozzy's going really well, so that's just launched. That's in store now, and I'm doing a shoe line with Siren. So it's JLH, so Jennifer Louise Hawkins for Siren, and so I'm designing shoes and they'll come out in September. So look out for those. It hasn't been announced yet. So there you go. There you go.
But what about the pressures that do come with it? Obviously, being on billboards, magazines. Yeah. How do you cope with that?
You got to take the good with the bad, just brush it off, because there are, there's the rumours and there's the cameras, outside your house when you leave, certain things that come into it, but overall I'm really grateful for where I'm at.
The Butterfly Foundation, something that is obviously close to your heart. They've got some strong messages that you're keen to get out there and make sure that women know about these things.
Yeah, I've worked with the Butterfly Foundation a fair bit actually, through Lovable, the underwear line that I'm the face of. Also when I did Marie Claire, the cover, that was a bit controversial, which was all for a good cause, which is the Butterfly Foundation, and they deal with girls with eating disorders, and within my industry so many girls deal with you're not skinny enough, and those words are just terrible and I don't agree with them. I just take things and I just think nothing's out of reach if you really have a dream, so it's for all the young girls, you should just go for what you want.
Obviously got the modelling contracts, you've got the labels, the TV deals. I mean, what left is there for Jen Hawkins to conquer?
Just continue with those things, probably in 5 or so years I'll want to, do the whole family thing, get married. I want to do all of that.
How is Jake?
We're so like that at the moment. So, I don't know when it'll happen, but he's beautiful. He's such a lovely guy and, we've been through everything together. So we've definitely had a roller coaster ride, but at the moment in the last couple of years, we've just become really, really close.
But it's great to have you back home, even if it is just for a few days. We wish you all the luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Following their win over the Tigers, the Seagulls are back in the mix as serious title contenders. They believe a trip up the F3 is the ultimate test at this time of year, but for Ben Farah it takes on extra significance. Born and raised in Newcastle, he played juniors alongside Jared Mullen, Corey Patterson and Scott Duro.
Yeah, I've got a fair few mates there, I know a fair few of the boys, so I spoke to them a few times already this week and a few sly little texts going on, that sort of stuff. But
he says shutting down Kurt Gidley will be the key.
The more times he gets the ball in his hand, the more dangerous he is. He's just sort of one of those players that pops up everywhere.
As usual, Gidley has taken the pressure in his stride.
Yeah, it's not the first time it's happened, so I'm comfortable with it. As long as it's the best for the team, I'm prepared to play anyway. It doesn't worry me.
In the real NRL, Wyong takes on Maitland this weekend, with the winner most likely to challenge Wests for the minor premiership. The Roos will focus on shutting down Maitland's potent halves combination of Mick Moran and Jade Porter.
Our defence around the ruck's going to be very tight, especially the really good playmakers, the halves.
In other games, Central host the Northern Blues tonight, while Wests will look to maintain top spot when they face Souths on Sunday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. With most grounds in the Hunter closed because of wet weather, a walk in the park was all Jeremy Brockie could manage this morning. As the fight for places in the squad heats up, the 22-year-old knows time is running out to get fit, but he won't risk long-term injury by rushing back from his strained calf.
It's coming along good, and I'll get on the park tomorrow with some more running and then join the team for training on Sunday to try and give me enough time to impress the coaching staff.
The Kiwi international says he'd prefer to play in a wide midfield role on either the right or left, and believes he has the ability to help the Jets solve their goal-scoring problems.
They didn't really come too well for me last year, but I scored a couple in pre-season this year, and all the boys, all the attacking players have been popping up with goals, so it's good to see.
In NBN State League action, 2 games this weekend could drastically change the makeup of the top 4. Sitting on equal points, West Wallsend host Edgeworth tomorrow as both sides try to chase down Western. The competition frontrunners welcome Hamilton to town on Sunday, looking to get their season back on track following a shock loss to Broadmeadow last weekend. Meanwhile, the Magic will be looking to deliver a critical blow to Valentine Phoenix as they try to make a run to the finals. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
National Senator Barnaby Joyce joined Hunter candidate Michael Johnson in Maitland to hit Labor in its heartland.
We want to make sure that people know that we're fighting for the people on the ground in Hunter.
The pair perused them all, listening to constituents' concerns. Promises were made to improve the region in the hope of winning votes.
We know that this is going to be a battle.
And true to form, the senator took aim at the ALP.
We're sick of the incompetence, we're sick of the backstabbing and the bitchiness that's going on within the Labor Party, and I think we'll take a change. And so Michael Johnson, with the National Party, is a great candidate.
But it wasn't all politics. Senator Joyce also caught up with a uni friend. It began here at the Stag and Hunter Hotel just before 7 p.m. when a 51-year-old Jesmond man glassed a Mayfield man in the face. The 28-year-old victim was rushed to John Hunter Hospital with deep cuts, while the alleged offender was charged with reckless wounding.
It is a terrible crime. It's people don't seem to realise the injuries that these offences cause.
The next crime occurred just after midnight in nearby Villiers Street when a female pizza delivery driver was set upon by 2 men armed with a bar and robbed of cash. Just half an hour later, another armed robbery, this time at the junction. Again, 2 thieves were involved.
And the 22-year-old male victim was pursued by one of the offenders and was bailed up by this offender and threatened with a knife.
A 35-year-old man has since been charged with robbery. Next came the arson attacks. At 1:20 a.m, a 30-year-old homeless man's car was burnt out in Memorial Drive while he was undergoing breath tests at a Newcastle police station. 6 hours later, a Holden ute was set on fire in Light Street. Witnesses saw a man fleeing from the scene. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Joel Edwards is definitely the type of forward who lets his game do the talking. Having recently signed a new 2-year deal with the club, the softly spoken Cessnock Jr. is quietly plotting a course towards a full-time career in the top grade.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lifelong goal to play first grade, and I'm striving to make every post a winner at the moment.
Fellow forward Dan Tolar remains in doubt for Monday's clash with Manly, but several other high-profile players got the nod this morning.
Isaac De Gois is good, Junior Sow's good, Adam McDougall's good, so they're all passed and moving okay.
As for the rest of the squad, coach Rick Stone says it's not hard to find motivation to play the old enemy in Newcastle. The fact the Knights have won 3 of their past 4 Monday night games is also cause for optimism.
A couple of days off early in the week has freshened the boys up, and we've definitely come back nice and sharp and bright. The sessions we've done have been good, and looking forward to Monday.
Meanwhile, the club is yet to decide on a course of action for Corey Patterson's shoulder injury.
We've got another couple of days working on Paddo to decide whether he's going to take the surgery option or we're going to keep pushing on for the rest of the year.
August 1, the horse's birthday, and this mum certainly had something to celebrate. Her colt, possibly the season's first.
He's a couple of days early, but he's a little cracker.
At just 3 days old, he's already got an idea of what it's all about, and in thoroughbred land, there's no time for horseplay.
The owner's already seen this little fella and he couldn't be happier, and fingers crossed.
4,500 mares will foal in the next 5 months. Some will grow up to make big bucks in the ring. Others will hit the ground running. But most agree success starts in the breeding barn, and Costa de Lago is high on the list of hopeful owners. He's one of the Hunter Valley's biggest attractions, fetching nearly $150,000 a pop. This season, he'll have his eye on around 200 mares.
He'll be a busy boy in 4 weeks from now.
And when it comes to sought-after pedigree, these fillies certainly stand out. 20 Miss World Australia contestants this afternoon landed in Newcastle, and tomorrow they'll start a 3-day race for the crown. Merryweather's Maxine Stokes already has 1 victory, today named Miss Newcastle. Nat Wallace, NBN News.
Unlike most motorsports, the State Hill Climb Championships include a range of makes and models, but not everyone has the horsepower to win the title. Drivers pour thousands into the sport, even tyres are given special treatment to keep them in pristine condition. The Ringwood track near Raymond Terrace is highly rated, but Amy Mercella found one corner a little too tight. It was a similar story for Wayne Allen, who wasn't holding back. Mudgee's Doug Barry has been on the podium 4 times already this year, but is yet to finish on top. He remains second overall following his 4th place finish today.
It's a great little venue. It's really suited to the small cars, and it makes the big horsepower cars like my own and that, and Peter Gumley's car really have to struggle to try and keep with the smaller open wheelers.
Wollongong's Peter Gumley is the man they're all trying to catch. He now has an unbeatable lead in the series after today's win, despite the fact he missed several laps because of mechanical problems. Tim Edmondson is the only other serious contender. His time of 28.66 seconds was enough to grab second. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's one of the most important issues for the Paterson electorate, aircraft noise arising from the introduction of the Joint Strike Fighters at Williamtown. Today, Labor's promises were outlined.
It's going to give our community some certainty, a way forward with this.
The plan includes consideration of the extension or duplication of the runway to shift noise to the southeast and replacing the current 2025 air noise exposure forecast with a new noise map to be issued before the end of the year after public consultation. But they were also quick to criticise the sitting member on the issue.
Bob Baldwin has failed to ask me for a single meeting. He has not done his job as a local member. Lazy, ineffectual and a party hack.
And glowing terms, of course, for Mr Arneman.
He is a man, I think, who will be a tiger in the floor of Parliament representing the interests of this area.
But he's become embroiled in controversy for using old footage in his campaign advertisement of Stroud nursing home residents who have since died.
I just find that it's unfortunate and insensitive, and I feel very sorry for the people at the nursing home, for their family and friends.
I've provided written apologies to the people there. But a lot of the relatives that I've talked to have been disappointed that that was taken directly to the press by Bob Baldwin's office.
Bob says that's not true, but did admit he'd suggested to those concerned to contact the media.
Really, they're very similar. I can't really tell the difference between them. And so we'll be saying vote one green on election day and number all the squares, but you know, it's up to the voter. Power in the hands of the people.
Established in April 1889, levelled in August 2010, Newcastle City Bowling Club's long and sometimes turbulent history comes to an end this week, care of a demolition crew.
It's great. Well, it's been a while, but now we're starting to demolish. We've been preparing the site the last week or so, stripping out the asbestos.
The western end of the site was first to go. The former clubhouse will be knocked down over the next few days. Back in 1998, when this NBN News footage was shot, the club was attempting to make a revival after its membership dwindled. Unfortunately, it didn't last and was returned to public ownership in 2005. Since then, the state government and developers have been planning the future of the site, perched on a cliff next to King Edward Park. Now that's certain.
It'll be an absolutely top-class, state-of-the-art function centre.
While the wind made the site fairly inhospitable today, by November next year, it's hoped Novocastrians, including bridal parties, will be able to enjoy the spectacular views from the comfort of a new function centre and restaurant.
All going well, we should be able to lodge a DA shortly, within a few months.
The project will cost about $4 million. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Since the Belmont Wetlands State Park was established just 5 years ago, a growing band of volunteers has devoted thousands of hours to cleaning up the old coal and sand mining site with the vision of turning it into a piece of bush that can be enjoyed by all. Today, Lands Minister Tony Kelly announced another milestone for the project.
September, October last year, we called for submissions from the public on a draft plan of management that has now been adopted by the Department of Lands. And in addition to that, we've also announced $250,000.
The money will be used to build walkways, cycleways and roads in the park and to improve the area's biodiversity.
It's there available now to be spent this year. In fact, By Christmas time this year, we'd expect to see a information centre and workshop, as well as the Fernley track completed.
The Trust is happy with the funding but says more money is needed.
Substantial funds like this $250,000 and the many more that will need to come on a site of this huge regional scale and certainly eventually international importance will need to be forthcoming.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's come quicker than some may have hoped, but there's no stopping the start of the A-League season. Key Jets mixed it with their rivals in Sydney today for the Code's launch and were happy to tell everyone to look out for them this year.
Are we good enough? Time will tell, but certainly at this stage we're quite happy with what we have.
Ben Kantarovski was just happy to be home after a demanding but successful playing schedule, captaining the Australian under-19s in Vietnam, which saw them crowned ASEAN champions.
It was a great honour to sort of hold up the trophy right at the end and sing with all the lads in the team. It was quite sort of fulfilling.
But that's not going to guarantee him a spot in the Jets opener on Friday night in Adelaide.
He's had a very good pre-season, which probably in the past he didn't quite have, and he's well in the running for a starting spot.
With training resuming tomorrow, Kantarovski accepts that he has a job ahead to convince the coach.
People would say it's football. It's starting to look like Europe a bit, which is good for the A-League. It's good. There's about 6 players, I think, fighting for those 2 positions, which is quality.
If you needed an example of how the Hunter Academy is assisting young kids reach their potential, look no further than Lake Macquarie's national BMX champion Rachel Jones, who won a World Championship silver medal in South Africa at the weekend. On Thursday, Madawi 16-year-old baseball pitcher Mindy Latimer heads to Venezuela with the senior Australian women's baseball team for the world titles.
I think the nerves will take over for a bit there, but I think it'll be all good, yeah. I hope it will.
I mean, most girls your age are playing softball instead of baseball. Why the choice?
Softball's for girls.
The Academy will now be able to help even more of its 600-odd athletes with a significant increase in private funding today.
We're providing the opportunities for kids to get to the top of sport, but many of them don't. So what happens to them? Hopefully, their experience with us in the Academy makes them better young people.
A relaxing trip from Lake Macquarie to Pittwater became anything but this morning when this 14-metre Riviera with 5 people on board was driven at speed onto a sandbank. 4 of the crew, aged in their 70s and 80s, were injured when the luxury boat came to a sudden stop. Among them, crew member Jan Carruthers, who was brought ashore by police launch.
It was an almighty crash, sort of thud, and we were on the sand. I didn't know what happened till everything flew down. Off the boat, off the shelves, and a couple of people fell down the stairs.
One of them went through a door, and another with a leg injury, and another one had facial injuries.
With a strong wind pushing the rescue boats towards the sandbank, the decision was taken to airlift the worst injured. The largely disused Belmont Airport nearby was set up as a staging post as the helicopter crewmen battled severe gusts to winch the patients aboard the aircraft, at times being spun around like a child's toy. After 3 airlifts, all the injured were ashore and are tonight in a stable condition in hospital. The vessel, Miss Penny, was part of a rally of 29 boats from the Royal Motor Yacht Club at Pittwater that had been visiting the lake over the weekend. They'd been trying to make a 7 o'clock bridge opening when they hit the sandbank just metres from a marker buoy warning of the danger below.
The entrance to Swansea Channel from the lake is quite narrow, and at this stage it looks like they've missed the entrance and run aground on the local sandbar.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Prime Ministerial circus rolled into Newcastle this afternoon and straight into a media conference. But when time is precious in such a short campaign, why visit a seat that appears set to remain in ALP hands with a tight contest expected for Patterson just up the road? Well, the Prime Minister offered only this. Ms Gillard instead spent her short visit to the Hunter spruiking her economic credentials.
The better economic plan to bring the budget back to surplus in 2013. The better economic plan to keep supporting jobs. The better economic plan to keep having decent conditions at work for working Australians under the Fair Work system.
Another issue that affects the electorate is interest rates, with about 14,000 people paying off an average mortgage.
If they've got a typical mortgage, say around $300,000, we're talking about mortgage repayments being around $2,800 less per year.
To say this was a whistle-stop tour would be an understatement. The Prime Minister came to one of the state's safest Labor seats, didn't address any local issues, then took her campaign elsewhere. The only real brush with locals was during the walk from Customs House, which she left in the same swift fashion that she arrived. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
For Novocastrians, it felt a little bit like a Pasha Bolka blow, but today's gale and rain proved to be little more than a spectacular annoyance. Coinciding with bin night, several Newcastle suburbs were strewn with a week's worth of rubbish as wheelie bins took off during the peak of the blow at 5:30am. They were flung across roads and swept along gutters. Trees were snapped in too by the force of the gusts, and car parks resembled the surface of the sea as windswept water tried to escape. It was a slow commute for workers as windscreen wipers struggled to keep up, and those on foot had their work cut out trying to hang on to unruly umbrellas. Many brollies simply didn't survive. Every now and then a break in the clouds brought some relief, only to close in again for another blast. Beaches and ocean baths were closed as the sea pounded the coast.
We've got a very strong south swell pushing up along the coast, so we're seeing waves 3-4 metres. It's a lot of white water, very dangerous surf and swimming conditions.
Most of us soldiered on today. It wasn't much fun being a postie, and the Stockton Ferry still made its run. About 3,000 houses in pockets across Newcastle, Lake Macquarie and Port Stephens woke up without electricity this morning. Power has this evening been restored to most customers. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
For those living in Islington and Hamilton North, this was cause to be nervous. The stormwater drain which flows into Throsby Creek was transformed from a trickle to a raging torrent, not far off overflowing.
Scared stiff. Are we going to get another flood? Are we ready to jump in the cars and take our cars to higher ground?
It was a similar story at Wallsend, where the stormwater created a fast-flowing river. Right across the region, water pooled on roads, while it also built up around low-lying homes and parks. Kathy and John Smith kept a close eye on the situation. Their home was flooded in 2007.
Very jittery, very jittery. We're watching out in the drains. My neighbour's worried, she's ringing us from work, so on tenterhooks.
Newcastle Council workers did their best to unblock drains, including this one at Lambton. It's been an ongoing battle to improve the capacity of pipes across the region since the Pasha Bolka storm.
We've cleaned out a significant number of blocked drainage lines, particularly in Carrington in the tidal zone.
And while its flood management plan isn't due for completion until March, Council says its infrastructure coped well.
Yes, but taken in context, it wasn't a very heavy rain event today.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Expensive race monitoring equipment once lay here. Now it's just a series of smashed doors, broken locks and empty spaces, all evidence of a well-planned robbery.
They came with crowbars and bolt cutters and equipment like that to break into the place.
The crime was carried out just hours after the MG Car Club hosted round 7 of the State Hill Climb Championship. Members suspect that's when and where thieves laid eyes on the club's 2 computers and 3 widescreen TVs.
We believe they cased the joint at our event on Sunday and then came back when there was no one here.
And that, the club says, has made the robbery all the more devastating.
Doesn't make you feel very good at all. No, you trust people, you invite them along to watch our car racing, which is enjoyable, we hope, but it's not nice to have that happen.
As well as the race officials' shed, thieves also broke into a canteen and stole a bar fridge and eskies full of soft drinks. The thieves then carried the heavy equipment for around 800 metres to this gate, where it's believed they had a vehicle waiting. The crime has cost the club between $5,000 and $10,000, and while the volunteer organisation is insured, it'll still have to pay for a new security system. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's well known that a rail line was built right to the end of the Nobby's breakwater as it was being constructed in the mid-1800s. But less is known about these tracks, which have emerged from a sand dune at the back of Nobby's beach.
The Europeans have like 5,000-year-old icemen sort of come out, but we have a bit of exposed rail line because it just shows where we come from. But it's still fascinating because it's a part of our history that's laid buried.
Local history buffs and the National Trust inspected the exposed line today. It's thought the tracks are part of a spur which was constructed off the main line around the 1930s.
But this spur, they think, had something to do with sand mining for locomotive use, building and construction.
New South Wales Governor Marie Bashir will be briefed on the find tomorrow when she visits Nobby's to dedicate a plaque. It'll be erected near the spot where Lachlan Macquarie laid the foundation stone of the pier 192 years ago this week. She'll also open an exhibition on the subject at Fort Scratchley, which will be open to the public this weekend. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Hard to miss on a football field, Aku Uate was proving just as elusive off it today, leaving others to simply marvel at his efforts.
The scary thing is he's learning and he's still got a lot of improvement in him. He's still going to get a lot bigger and stronger.
His third was the most talked about. It appeared Adam McDougall was upset at missing a chance to score one himself, and teammates were quick to jump on that.
Nah, he's still filthy, Mad Dog. I think he's only a couple of tries off holding the club record, so I think that's what he's most filthy about.
I think Doogie said he was smoking a cigar waiting to put it down, but it took a little off break, and Aku said, well, that'll do me, that's mine.
The coach doesn't care who scores them, so long as they keep on coming this Sunday against the Bulldogs, given both teams need to win every match to reach the finals.
I mean, we're not looking too far down. We know we've got a tall order for ourselves and the equation's pretty tough, but 1 week at a time, and if we can back up the sort of performance that we had last night, well, we'll be competitive.
And that's got the Dogs worried.
I thought they were great defensively. I think they forced Manly into a lot of errors and put Manly under a fair bit of pressure.
Dan Toller was named today to return. However, Steve Simpson's comeback remains on hold. Whoever runs out on Sunday has to match last night's effort.
That game last night, so that's where we've got to sort of stick to now. You can't go below that performance, and we've got to promise ourselves that we've got to keep doing that, and we're only going to let ourselves down if we don't.
Standing shoulder to shoulder today, the Jets watched some other movers and shakers. But in 3 days' time, the real show begins in Adelaide, and players just can't wait.
So we've got a lot more expectation. The squad and depth in the team is a lot stronger now, which the boys know that.
Honoured to be leading the team, the captain's goals don't differ from those of his players.
You always want to do better than last season. If we can emulate what we did last year and go 1 or 2 steps further, then that would be absolutely brilliant. 2 steps is the trophy,
The Jets' pre-season trial form has given them confidence, while the welcome addition of key players has only added to a feeling that the club can really challenge for its second premiership.
If you don't go into things believing, you might as well not even bother taking part. So you've got to have high hopes, and I hope these boys here realise how good they are.
Today's rain affected another crucial training session for the likes of Jeremy Brocky. The New Zealand World Cup rep is desperate to prove his fitness in time to take his place in Friday's season opener against Adelaide, and tomorrow may provide his last chance. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
That curved front north-facing wall is for maximum sunlight, so you get as much sunlight during the day as possible.